We go to this event every 2 years in Stockholm, in Sweden. We bought quite a bit of Swedish krona, aside from using credit cards. And when I wanted to change that back in the United States to dollars, I took a 50% haircut, even though it should only be 11%, because it is not a reserve currency. So with people like Libra and other sorts of cryptocurrencies that peg themselves to a basket of currency or to peg themselves to the dollar, in other countries where they don't have one of the reserve currencies, it's very important.
Today I talked to Carolina Abenante, founder at NYIAX, on the Speaking of Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Grinnell.
Want to learn more and be inspired by crypto's frontrunners who are out on the leading edge of this technology? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Speaking of Crypto with your host, Shannon Grinnell.
Carolina Abenante, founder at NYIAX, talks about bringing financial trading technology to the advertising and entertainment industries using blockchain technology. This is episode number 85 for the Speaking of Crypto podcast, the 7th episode in our Women in Crypto Wednesday series. We talk about Carolina's legal expertise in creating effective smart contracts, creating a secondary market for the $700 billion advertising market. We talk about using blockchain's transparency to reduce fraud, and Facebook's Libra increasing adoption, and how Carolina believes Facebook can maintain data privacy. We also talk about cryptocurrency versus tokenization, a US CBDC, global women in blockchain, and her advice for women entering the space, and much, much more. We have a really great conversation, and I'm so happy I was able to chat with Carolina for the podcast. But before we get started, today's show is brought to you by Ledden. Ledden is Canada's leading Bitcoin financial services company, offering a suite of services to help you save in Bitcoin. Ledden's Bitcoin-backed loans let you access dollars without selling your Bitcoin. Ledden's Bitcoin savings account also lets you earn 3.5% annual interest, compounded and paid monthly in Bitcoin. Learn more at ledden.io. This episode is also brought to you by Stark. Stark's payment system allows your online business to accept Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies without restructuring your existing technology. Join the new era of the internet. Find out more at starkpayments.com. And to all of you listening, thank you for helping to make this podcast happen. Now here's Carolina Abenante. Carolina, it's really great to talk to you today. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you have a really impressive resume, so I thought I'd ask if you could start by giving us a little bit of background as to your experience and how it relates to the role that you're in now.
Well, I'm an attorney by trade. I also have an MBA. I've been in digital and internet media-related businesses since '98. I started at Juno Online Services, which was a large ISP. It was a D.E. Shaw startup. Then I went to Reed Elsevier, which most people don't know, but it's one of the largest publishers in the world. Most people know Elsevier Science or LexisNexis or Reed Business Information, but I was there with corporate strategy and for business development, and we were doing the changeover to make it into all digital aspects for that business. And then from there, I did a series of different startups. One was VoiceStar that was eventually sold to Marcheck, who was started by one of the people that I was working with, Ari Jacoby. And then from there, I worked in a lot of private equity. And then Form, which was a very large behavioral advertising business. And then back to private equity. Then we started NYIAX, which was really a dream of ours from my co-founder, who I met through another person that I was doing work with. And he was basically the background for everything in financial services, Mark Grimbaum.
Yeah, fantastic. So I want to get into NYIAX in just a sec, but I thought I'd ask, out of all of that wealth of experience, what do you think would be sort of the key things that you're bringing with you that were most important for you to have learned in your previous experience?
Well, the most important thing that I learned in my previous experience for coming into digital advertising was the fact that I was in it for a long period of time. I knew most of the players that were there, and I knew a lot of the issues that we were having, which was dealing with transparency in the contract process and also for reconciliation of those contracts. So
Mm-hmm.
being an attorney was very important in that because as attorneys, we understand contracts and how reconciliation works in contracts. And I also have a background in tax. I have an LLM in tax. So that also helped immensely in the starting and the formation of the strategy for NYIAX.
Yeah. So what would you say is that instigating inspiration, or what was it that really motivated you to found your company?
Well, when I met Matt Greenbaum, what we were doing was we wanted to do something in mobile advertising and also in the broader sense of advertising of the digital scope. So we were looking through a lot of the USPTO, which is for trademark and also for patents, on what wasn't being used. And since Mark came from financial services, he built the International Securities Exchange, ISE, and he was the creator of the Dow Jones International Indices. We wanted to have something that we could work around and bring financial trading systems to the digital advertising medium, because that would bring in a very fluid marketplace where people could buy, sell, and retrade advertising, both audience-based and also space in any kind of publisher, and then have a secondary market. And the secondary market has never existed in our industry. And we wanted to build it on a future plan, so forward contracts. So this was kind of the inspiration happened by meeting Mark, his background, and also looking at what wasn't being done in the market. And we wanted to have something that we could have a lot of intellectual property around. So we were very diligent in looking at what was already addressed by the USPTO.
Yeah, it's really interesting. At the same time, this is where you lose me a little bit because I don't have a background in financial services. And I think a lot of our listeners came to crypto before they had that sort of investing kind of background. But so I thought I'd ask you if you could give us like a high level look at what the forwards or futures market looks like for buying, selling, and trading advertising. Just give us a picture of that world.
Well, it's a little bit different than what you would see if you were going on the CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange,
Mm-hmm.
or if you were looking at anything in sort of the NASDAQ Futures Exchange, the Philadelphia Exchange. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to take the secret sauce of what existed with them, which was to buy properties, audience, which is in advertising. You buy based on audience. You buy based on cookie-based information or individual information. And they also buy space. And we wanted to be able to buy that for the future. And why we wanted to do this is agencies and advertisers, who's the buy side, and sellers, which are the media interests, such as your Turner, or your Hulu, or other similarly situated media properties,
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to sell that. Now, they want to be able to sell the contracts in real time, but at the same point, they want to also be able to buy large-scale contracts at this point in time for a future time frame and effectuate that in the future time frame. So a futures market works very well. We first are creating liquidity in this future sense. So we're putting together both the buy side and the sell side, the advertisers and agencies from the buy side, and the sell side, the publishers, all the different scopes of publishers, whether it's going to be just digital, mobile, digital video, and eventually into TV and programmatic TV as well. And what we wanted to do, create that liquidity in that market, that transparency in that market, and then have the ability for people to take positions and then to retrade them. So then you can bring in other individuals into this market, such as hedge funds and other private equity groups, and even brokers eventually to come in. Because this is one of the largest markets. This is a $700 billion market that doesn't have a secondary market. And this was ripe for actually creating a futures and forwards market.
Yeah, it's really, really
Does
interesting.
that answer your question?
Yeah. You've given me a really, it's just opened my eyes to the fact that this is happening out in the world and that there's this real possibility for it to become, bigger and bigger. And what would you say, Carolina, if what the problem that NYIAX is really solving for, if you had to break it down and just say, what's the big picture issue that you're solving? You've kind of explained it, but maybe you can go further. And how does blockchain help with that?
Well, we solve a myriad of different problems, but the first problem that we solve is creating an exchange that's open and everybody can see what is happening. The second part of this problem is not what a lot of exchanges in the financial exchanges that people understand equities exchanges do. We do our own clearing. While equity exchanges use a third party to do clearing, they do the trade on the exchange, but then they use a third party, such as the DTCC, for clearing. So we marry this more into a CME model, which is the futures model, which they do self-clearing. So in the clearing for these contracts, when they buy an audience for a future time frame, there is a lot of issues dealing with how that contract clears. How many people actually were addressed in that contract? What was the viewability of the ad? What was the amount of fraud that existed inside that ad? All of these things happen post-trade, and this is called the supply chain piece of this. So the supply of the contract, the life cycle of this contract, and we address all of those points. So we wanted to use something where we could have both the publisher and the advertiser that were party to the contract to be able to view and look at the contract as it was being populated, and that the terms were being addressed as part of the trade. So we created the contract through order books in the front end. That was during the trade. And then through the supply chain, we were then addressing that by rating it onto the blockchain, allowing both sides to see the contract as it was populating, and also use the third parties, because these were the certification providers, such as IAS, Double Verify, Moat, and others that were looking at how much fraud existed inside that contract. What was the audience that was actually addressed in that contract? What was the viewability of that contract? So we were modeling all of this on the blockchain. In this way, we have all parties looking at the contract, understanding the terms of their contract and how it was being reconciled. And post-reconciliation, then how we're doing the distribution of funds. This was never done before, because in most other exchanges that exist in our industry are really spot markets dealing with auction-based advertising. So in this way, we create a very fluid methodology that allows for transparency for all sides and allows the full benefit that we can look at all of the aspects during the life cycle of that contract to distribution of funds.
Yeah, really interesting. So it seems like you're eliminating fraud with the transparency that blockchain can enable. And then you're also extending the life cycle of these advertising contracts, essentially by really just creating this from order book through supply chain, and then, just looking at all aspects of maybe what went wrong and sort of remedying that so that they can continue on. Does that sound right?
It does. And we also use something else that is just, which is only in really the blockchain sense, but it actually existed outside of blockchain for many, many years. We use smart contracts. And the smart contracts allow for self-effectuation. That's why we really like blockchain, because we have people that sign up from the buy side and the sell side to specialized rules. There are rules, and then we can also do specialized orders, which would be the rules from the advertiser or the agency itself. And that will cause triggers. And these triggers that allow for the smart contract to effectuate are based on how much fraud they will accept, what was the viewability that they need to accept. And these are all in the pre-order book amounts that both sides know about beforehand when they enter the trade. And they self-effectuate during the life cycle. And they self-effectuate for reconciliation. And then upon the end of reconciliation, when it's fully reconciled, another smart contract is triggered for the distribution of funds. So this allows for full compliance. And this is what we love about blockchain, because it's very seamless in how we've developed this.
Yeah. So could you give me maybe a concrete example of some of the rules and then the triggers, and take us through the life cycle of, let's say, one possible contract and what that might look like?
Sure. Our rules are pretty extensive. They're really 14 pages long that people sign up for. But this allows them to see all aspects of it. It's how you are going to be viewed inside the contract, what you're agreeing to, and what the trigger points are. So normally in the order book cycle, you will say if you are an advertiser, what you're going to accept, usually around 90% to 100%, you want to accept for the viewability.
Right.
Then the audience is going to be based on certain terms and attributes that are inside the order book itself. So those have to all be hit in there. Then from the supply side, which is a publisher, there's a match between that because we preload all of their inventory on. And we've already gone in to their system through their ad server in order to understand what they have. We do a very long process of doing this piece. So what they can accept. When they match within this, that forms a trade. We then write that trade into the blockchain. So when it's supposed to trigger for the 90% on this, that will then trigger one aspect of the contract. Then we look at the fraud. That's also in the order book setting for the fraud. The advertiser will place in what they will accept for that. So if it doesn't hit that point, then we start with what is known as make goods or cure that happens inside the contracts. So then there could be a debt obligation for the publisher to actually have to give back to the advertiser, or we deal with a diminished amount. And this is all happening with the smart contracts as it's being populated during the life cycle of the contract. Does that, because I'm going to go through an example with an advertiser right now. Does that explain the first piece of how the rules work?
Yeah, absolutely. It must have been a really cumbersome process to come up with all of these smart contracts in order to, at each stage, right?
It is. We have a series of, they're really between 3 to 6. We have standardized ones, and then we have what is known as special orders. In the special order, it's not going to be our rules. It's going to be the rules of the advertiser, but then it has to be fully accepted by the publisher, and we can activate based on those rules as well.
Right.
What in actual description of this, you can take an advertiser such as, let's take Johnson & Johnson. So Johnson & Johnson has a new product that they want to place out into the market. They usually do it on their products. And they're going to do it probably for about a 12-month period because these products, they want to have it going for quite a long period of time. And they have specialized publishers that they want to go to. And then their rule setting has between a 90 to a 95% viewability, and also for fraud that they will accept no fraud almost, so up to a 95% fraud. So they usually have a specialized rule that the publisher will accept. We create trigger points on the audience that they're going to. If it's a diabetes medication, they usually are going to a certain set of people, which are the attribute set. It could be women in a certain category, men, or it could be a variant between the two of them. And we then create separate trigger points for each one of the attributes as well. And that works through the life cycle. So this self-effectuation that we work with for these large contracts, because these contracts are usually in the hundreds of thousands to over $1 million because they're over many months. We then not only trade it on exchange, but we follow it till the distribution of funds. And we then effectuate it with our, in real time with the party that we just announced with, which is IPON Web, that actually does the delivery of the ad.
It's really interesting. So Carolina, do you think as a retail consumer or investor that this technology is somehow to my benefit? How would it help me?
Well, I mean, we're B2B. We are looking at the first part of the market. Now we are going to be creating a secondary market from this when we have enough liquidity on the exchange. I do not believe that as a retail investment, which would be like you and me coming in to invest in there, that this would be open to them at any point in time. I do believe that this is going to be a very big place to play for a lot of the qualified investors and institutions, because this is an alternative trading system. This is not a national trading system like the NASDAQ or like the New York Stock Exchange.
Mm-hmm. Sorry,
so
how do you mean? Yeah, go ahead.
from that point of view, the retail consumer is not a party to our contract, but the investor and the investing public could come into this. And they could come into this when we start opening this up to more institutional trading. And then they were a member of some of the institutional trading systems that would be out there, such as if they were party to a hedge fund or something like that.
Right.
So that is a different community that would come in.
Absolutely. Yep, that makes sense. Want to do more with your Bitcoin? Try Ledden's Bitcoin savings account, which pays out 3.5% annual interest, compounded and paid monthly in Bitcoin. Want to diversify your holdings, start a business, or buy more Bitcoin? Access a dollar loan while maintaining ownership of your Bitcoin and potential upside. For more info, check out ledden.io. Want to take your business global and add new revenue streams for your business? Stark can help. Stark's payment system can guarantee you discounted transaction fees, as well as a suite of blockchain payment tools, including real-time transaction reporting. Find out more at starkpayments.com. Caroline, I thought I'd ask about your thoughts on Facebook's Libra project. I know there's a lot going on in the news. I think David Marcus was in Europe really defending the Libra project to, I think it was 26 central banks yesterday. What are your thoughts on Libra?
I like Libra a lot. I know what Draghi was saying about Libra, and he's going to be leaving very shortly, and Lagarde is coming in. But Draghi has a very specific thoughts on cryptocurrencies of any kind, which is that he doesn't really look at them because he doesn't see them as being an alternative to the euro at this point. I like it because, for example, Facebook is a very easy way to populate wallets. Everybody already has their profiles on Facebook. So having Libra currency, when you already have your profile inside of Facebook, and therefore moving towards more AML, so anti-money laundering and KYC, know your customer. When you start creating certain bank functionalities that could be part of your profile, then you know who you are. You know Caroline Abenante at that point, because I might give my driver's license, I might give my bank account as certain aspects of this so that I meet the AML KYC qualifications for it. And I think that Facebook is very well situated in order to become one of the most massive wallets of all time. And that helps my business because I can work with Facebook as a provider for audience-based data. And I sell audience-based data as in a futures market. And this would be the best type of first-party data that one can imagine. And people can have extreme control over this, whether they want their data to be sold, they don't want their data to be sold, and whether they could get certain kind of remunerations for that kind of data. So I think this is it for me. Facebook, this is an easy play for them. I like it very much.
I mean, yeah, it will be a game changer with their 2.3 billion users. But do you think that users will actually have any sort of say over their data? I mean, the history has not shown us that.
Well, absolutely they will. I believe that they will, because I think that they will be both GDPR, CCPA, any other similar situated privacy law compliant. I believe that they can easily create that. They become basically a repository for a myriad of billions of wallets, literally. And the individual can be in charge of whether they want to give their data to NYIAX or not, and for how long. And since it's going to be held inside the wallet, it could be a one-time use. And since I don't use the actual naming of the individual, I only use aggregated data, they can always pull back their data at a later point in time. So they're fully protected under all aspects of privacy law.
Yeah, I mean, blockchain does enable that at least anonymity where they can use different like zero knowledge proofs, let's say, for instance, to prove someone's identity without giving away information like their address and things like that.
And that's exactly how I see Facebook. I see it as a two-pronged approach. One, it's the wallets with the individuals And two, they're a certification provider for that. And that's what you want. You don't want the actual person placed on the blockchain, because even if they're under a hash and they're anonymized by cryptography, that still could be infringing on GDPR and CCPA. The GDPR, I hope everybody knows that the General Data Protection Regulation, and CCPA is the California Consumer Privacy Act. So it
should be compliant.
Direct,
you think
it would? I believe it will be compliant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. And then on the flip side, do you think a powerful company like Facebook should really be allowed to create a currency? Some say no.
Well, I mean, the question is why to say no on that. There's no difference in this and loyalty points of what they're creating. I see really no difference. And the people that they're working with at this point in time, if one were to look at the 100 different users that they're working with for their foundation, these all can easily marry into almost like a loyalty point environment. So we have loyalty points with United Airlines. We have loyalty points with almost every card, credit card and charge cards that exist. I don't see any difference between the two pieces. I don't see it as something that would be replacing the dollar at any point in time.
Mm-hmm. I think the things that I've heard in terms of concerns, and I believe I myself have the concerns, would be beyond the loyalty points. What if, I mean, right now, and the Libra white paper seems fairly innocent in a way because it's going to be a stable coin and it's backed by a basket of currencies. Different currencies. But if for some reason they decide to go ahead and, unpeg the Libra coin and then start sort of minting it or putting it out there and increasing the supply just willy-nilly, I think that's where there's a real concern is, and then it gets down to the question of, do we trust Facebook?
Well, everything can have a concern at a later period of time, and your concerns are very, very, they're poignant on it. But at this point in time, I'd like to see mass adoption of it and use of it in their system. And regulation will come in time of what they can do. I don't believe their foundation would have enough money, even if they were to have several $100 billion inside of it, if it would unpeg from the from the basket of currency. And the weighting's always to the U.S. dollar. If it were to unpeg from that, then if they have a shortfall, they don't have enough money to recoup from it. So I think that regulation will come in time, and it could easily have more. Could have certain. It could be compliant with all of the regulatory forms that need to happen in order to maintain it as a currency on its own. I just don't see it at this point in time that it would unpeg because there could be a massive shortfall in their foundation, which works as a central bank.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of not just people and companies, but a lot of governments that would be trying to stop that if they were heading in that direction.
Oh, I think so. But I mean, listen, we're talking about we're not talking about a lot of money at this point in time. It remains to be seen the adoption rate of it. I hope the adoption rate is going to be quite massive, but I think we should move forward with it. I think anything that creates any kind of obstacle to any new innovation, especially helping individuals in the unbanked forums that are not on currencies like the euro and the dollar, really is, it would be remiss of us. And I think Libra is looking at that as well.
Yeah, one of the things, just as an aside, that I am personally excited about is seeing cryptocurrency be used as a place where people around the world can actually earn currency through the internet and doing, just micro tasks and getting these micro amounts, whether it's watching a video and giving consent to, fill out a survey or whatnot. And even if it's might be small payments to us, but to someone living in another country, those might be more, substantial. Do you see Libra maybe having that kind of effect?
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I'm hoping Libra is going to be doing, because this would be a boon for the advertising market, because allowing people to get paid to watch ads or to watch videos that could be sponsored by certain ads, like on Hulu or on Roku or other people that are taking in advertisements as part of their system, that would be great. It would be a great methodology for it. And, I just want to give you a little experience of myself in dealing with a currency that wasn't a euro or wasn't a dollar. We go to this event every 2 years in Stockholm, in Sweden. And Sweden is not on the single currency. They have the Swedish krona. Now, we bought quite a bit of Swedish krona, aside from using credit cards. And when I wanted to change that back in the United States to dollars, I took a 50% haircut, even though it should only be 11%, because it is not a reserve currency. So with people like Libra and other sorts of cryptocurrencies that peg themselves to a basket of currency or to peg themselves to the dollar, in other countries where they don't have one of the reserve currencies, it's very important, because taking massive hits when you're trying to buy something online or you're trying to go to another country is disastrous. It doesn't allow for the flow of goods, and it actually streamlines the process and allows for people in many of these unbanked places in the world to be able to have a new start on life. And I think it's very important, and I'm glad that that Libra is doing this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you raise a really great point. I think there are many currencies around the world that they aren't looked at as, as a reserve currency like the US dollar is, and it's just not treated that way. And you're right. That 50% hit that you were taking is one that, just doesn't seem to make sense. So, exchanging cryptocurrencies should minimize that in terms of the exchange rate and the fees that will need to be paid.
It will. I mean, most of the currencies that are pegged to, of course, the dollar or to the dollar and euro, and depending on the weighting that they place inside there. But yes, that will help, and not that it needs to help any Swedish people, because they are a first world country, but it should help people in other areas of the world. But that's just an example that I know of, and it's an example from last year.
Yeah, interesting. Carolina, where do you see the crypto and blockchain space in 5 or 10 years from now? What's your hope for the near, maybe even further out future?
Well, let's pull out crypto from blockchain in and of itself. We've been working with blockchain since 2016. So for enterprise blockchain, I think that it's a very ripe market. Many of the large corporations and even medium-sized corporations are using or testing blockchain, especially for supply chain management and anything that's dealing with contracts. So we can talk about that with the physical supply chains. We can talk about that with economic and financial supply chains. That is already being tested, and many people are using that. Now, if we're talking about a fully distributed ledger for individuals to come into it, that is taking a lot more time for adoption. But I think that in the next 5 years, what we're talking about now as being a very new medium, this is going to be something that everybody's using. I believe my mother will be using it, and she's 82 years old at this point in time.
That's awesome.
So I think it's going to be just like Apple Pay. There's going to be no difference in that. There's going to be no difference in its usage. And I hope for that to happen, because having physical currency, there is a cost to governments, and also there's a cost to the individual to go to the bank, to go to certain places to get it. Transactions should be much more fluid, and they should be much easier to use and adopt. So that's going to take a little bit of a longer period of time. Crypto is very interesting aspect of it, and not every blockchain needs to use a crypto-based tokenization. You can use tokenization without having your own cryptocurrency that's part of it. That's most of the enterprise blockchains, just like our own. But we can use crypto for as just another medium to pay. If the individual wants to use that, we can, and we're hoping for more adoption for it. But there's going to be what you've said from the beginning with Libra. There's going to have to be new rules and new rule settings about that, and there has to be a lot more usage of AML and KYC, not just in the United States, but also abroad.
Do you think we'll see central bank digital currencies around the world, let's say 10 years from now?
I hope so. The Federal Reserve came out and said that they were not looking at it at this point in time, the U.S. I know Draghi was very much against it. I hope Lagarde is very different from Draghi when she comes in October. And these are the two main people that I'd like to see looking at that, because if they start looking at really moving forward with a digital currency, then this market will just start becoming a norm.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping for that. And I think the legislation will happen soon. It just takes pressure from the individual constituents to want to have this. And I think that people like myself and younger generations also want that. Not that I'm in that generation, but most of the people
That's okay, me neither.
Want to have that.
Yeah, I think so too. And do you think that there's one blockchain or one crypto token or wallet that will win out in the end? Do you see this king of crypto? Is it Bitcoin? Is there a killer app?
Okay, for blockchain, I do not see one blockchain winning out. It would be nice if there was one, but I think most of the players have to work as an application so that they can work with any of the blockchains that are out there. We are an application service that utilizes more than one blockchain, because we don't know in our industry which one's is it going to be Hyperledger Fabric?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be Interstellar? So you have to be able to use multiple blockchains, and they have to be just as fluid as if you were using any of them for both the buyer and the seller. I don't see which one's going to prevail, because prevailing on one blockchain would need regulation for it.
Right.
And it's not as easy as trying to do just, 5G or something like that. That would have to have a regulation and consensus among many countries
mm-hmm.
in order to do it. So I don't see a single blockchain happening. I think that all the application providers need to adapt themselves to use multiple blockchains and to give the same sort of service to every single one of those blockchains. And then your other question was about cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
and
will there be one?
Who will win out?
Mm-hmm.
Who will win out in this? It depends. Everybody's having a very good week, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, Litecoin, and EOS. They've all gone up substantially this week, and they've done exceptionally well since January. Now, Bitcoin, of course, is probably going to be one that's going to see the best and highest rise because of its usage on it. And now we're looking at Bakkt and other companies that are creating futures for them. And when you create futures markets for coins, and there was Bitcoin Gold and Bitcoin Cash already on the CME, you start having institutional traders using it. When you have that, then you have secondary markets for it. When you have secondary markets, you have a large flow of funds that's coming in. So what Kelly Loeffler is doing as the head of Bakkt is quite incredible, and it makes a lot of sense. So I think that if we had to say who's going to win out, Bitcoin will win out. But if we have to say who are going to be the number 2 and 3, I'd say Ethereum. Ethereum has had a very good run this year, and also Litecoin. These two are exceptional companies, and they are doing very well. They have a lot of mass adoption, and they're creating infrastructures for people to create application devices on their system and a lot of other services. So I do see those other two as being people that will win out. as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, I wanted to ask you, just in terms of your professional career, can you tell us one of the most challenging times that you've had in your career and how you were able to overcome it?
Well, I'll tell you, this is it's very personal, but I'd like to say this. When we were starting, actually the funding for NYIAX back in 2016, in 2015, I had a personal tragedy that happened to me, and it was in my family, and it was ongoing for over 4 years. So how we were able to do the financing, funding, creating up of our memorandums for financing and building this company happened during that time frame. And it was for 4 years. And I learned immensely about how to be extremely humble and thank everybody that helped you in that time frame. So it was amazing that we got it off the ground during that time. So yeah, it's personal, and it was a family member, and it was, they were in the hospital for a long period of time.
Oh, it's terrible. But some of those things really just teach us that we do have people who are supportive, and that you can sort of get through things and get to the other side. So it sounds like you were able to do that.
My whole group of NYIAX, my board, my investors, they all rallied around to become almost like a family. And that was extremely helpful for me. And they truly believed in what we were doing. So that, instead of being something that could have stopped us from building it, it actually helped us to move it forward. So I was extremely grateful for that. From, as everybody says, when one door closes, another one opens. I truly lived that. So yes, that helped a lot.
And we're going to release this podcast for our Women in Crypto series. So I thought I'd ask, what does it mean to be a woman in crypto, a woman in business, a woman doing what you're doing these days?
Well, a woman in crypto, these are all interesting questions about that. A woman in any business is extremely hard. We have very few companies and individuals that want to invest in women-led or women-founded businesses, and that needs to change in the future. It's much harder than working with men.
Have you come across that personally? Like you've come across some obstacles?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We've come across many obstacles in that regard. In how much you want to dedicate yourself to this. We've been dedicating ourselves to this for over 5 years, so we are in deep. The questioning about what we want to do, what we want, how I want to do it as being a woman, we've had all those questions. And, I was lucky. And a lot of people are not lucky to have individuals that you've known for a long period of time rally around you. And I've seen it from a lot of other individuals. And in crypto space, it's very, very hard as well. A lot of the people that are coming into crypto, that have built a lot of the crypto exchanges and forums, they come from the financial services community, and it is not very female friendly as well. Right. So that has to change. But I think this is a very new medium. Women can do exceptional work here. And I see this as, the 3.0 for the internet. And it's a very good time for women to come in, start businesses, align themselves with companies like Consensus and Backed, Facebook, NYIAX, and others. And they have a chance then to be part of a very, a growth rate that hasn't been seen since like the 99 to 2000.
Yeah, what would be your advice to a young woman who's just starting out? I was talking to someone on the podcast recently who said she was told by someone in sort of a mentorship role, she just said the advice she got was work 3 times as hard as a man. Didn't seem very encouraging to her. What would you say?
Work 3 times as hard as a man. Okay, that in any situation, working very, very hard is a great advice. So that I will say that's true. Work as hard as you possibly can, but understand the business. learn as much as you can. There are tons of meetups. Lana and I are part of Global Women in Blockchain. We're trying to get the word out about what blockchain is for women. We're looking at also doing a lot of scholarships for women that have either new projects or want to learn more about the industry. There's a lot of help right now that didn't exist when back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So they can come in now, and they can start meeting a whole host of women, not just in the United States, but all over the world, on what they should start doing. But learn as much as you can on it. The Chamber of Digital Commerce in DC is a great place to learn all the information about the U.S. and Europe and also Asia about what the legal positioning for both blockchain and cryptocurrencies are. So the more knowledge you have, the better it is. And then start going to the meetups to start meeting people and start making friends and network, because networking is the way that you can get your foot in the door, and then you can start learning more, and either as an intern in the beginning and then later on as actually working for the company or building something of your own, because there's a need in every aspect of this, and they can easily translate what they have in whatever job they have currently, or if they're a student and starting to meet people that are influential that can help them get that resume to the right place in order to get a new position in either crypto, blockchain and crypto, or in any new space.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, is there anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to chat about? Otherwise, I do have some fun questions for you.
Well, what you did ask me, I think this was before when we're going over the questions about this, why we felt it was very important for our industry to have blockchain, or to have enterprise blockchain, which is what we use at this point. Mm-hmm. It was in order to have this transparency that doesn't exist in our industry. And the way that we defined it was so that both the publisher and the advertiser can see what's going on during the contract life cycle. But it was more than that. It was in order to have an era that we had the certification. So this industry that is so ripe with fraud, we have 33% fraud in this industry, wow, which is a lot. I mean, if this existed in the financial industry, we would be shut down.
Right. That's a good point.
But blockchain has allowed us, and both the publishers and the advertisers are very open to using this technology. And what I would like to see going forward is not just that they come to an exchange and we work this way. I'd like to see them to be able to build their own rails, so that they can actually do the trading via rail for blockchain. Hmm. So I'd like to have more adoption in my own industry for this. So not just in an enterprise blockchain of our own, but other enterprise blockchains linking into us. Aside from just the certification providers or the reconciliation, but from the primaries that are on this. So I'd like to see that moving forward as well.
Fantastic. Really great. Appreciate you adding that. Do you have time for fun questions?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start with number one. If you could swap jobs with anyone for a day, whose job would you want to try out?
I would like to, I was thinking about this one. I really would like to swap jobs with Adina Friedman. She's the CEO of NASDAQ. And we know her because we are partnered with the NASDAQ. We use the NASDAQ's OMX system that powers NYIAX. She's probably one of the most interesting women in the United States and pretty much in the world on working in financial industry. She's been there forever. She has been since at other places, but she's really somebody that people should know about if they want to get into anything in financial, blockchain, or cryptocurrency. Look at her life cycle of what she's done, and she's running the most innovative and powerful exchange in the United States, and she's a woman.
Very cool.
And it's just amazing.
Love it.
So,
would you make any big changes while you were there for your day?
Well, listen, I mean, I don't know if there's certain regulatory issues with the NASDAQ on what they can or can't do, but I would like them to start working a lot more with crypto. I think that there could be a nice play for them inside the crypto community on their own, and not just working with third parties and licensing their technology to them. I think that they could do a lot more, but that could be because they have certain regulatory restrictions,
right.
And that is the only reason for that. And maybe they might be doing something right now that I don't know of. Because
There's
they
that
do
too,
a lot
yeah.
of things I don't know of.
Right. Interesting. Number 2, Carolina, what's the highest Bitcoin price or the lowest you could imagine Bitcoin hitting this year?
Well, I mean, right now, what are we? 10,250 or around that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and it was up. It was higher during the summer. It hit around 12 and change. So I do see. I mean, right now we had quite a few issues with the trade war that's going on, but also what just happened this weekend with Saudi Arabia with
Right.
the bombing of the oil
Yep.
fields. And oil has taken, it's gone up quite a bit on the exchanges. So Bitcoin looks like a very interesting play. And if this goes on, that there could be more attacks that happen in one of the largest commodities that we have. I see Bitcoin surging. So it could go as high as 25,000 this year, and that's not that much higher than where it is. I mean, it is a 50% increase.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, over doubling, 2.5 times increase. But it's done this before, and that's a possibility. I'm not Tim Draper going for $250,000 in the next 2 years.
No.
But that's as high as it could go, in my opinion, and as low as it could go this year. It could go back to being in the 5,000 era. It just depends on the stability of it. It's not so much. It's going to be about what Bakkt is doing, what other people are doing for the futures market, how much it's going to be adopted, and what is going to be the consensus of use by the individual.
Yeah. Number 3, I have asked you this question already. What's the most challenging time in your career? I have another question that I sometimes ask, which is, if you could ask Satoshi one question, what would you ask him or her or them?
Or him or them. That's the
Yeah.
question. The them. Yeah, the them. I would like to ask them, because I think it's a group of people that were working on it, similar to the way that Ethereum started. I'd like to see if they really thought that there would be this huge market for it later on, because I don't think that they actually ever thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were just looking at this as a very useful tool for their time period when they wrote the white paper. I don't believe that they really thought that the adoption would be as global as it is at this point in time, and how many other people came out of it.
Yeah, I would agree with you for sure. I think that maybe the Satoshis or Satoshi thought that it was maybe a great tool for libertarians, but I think you're right. Like institutional investors, I don't know if they ever would have pictured that.
No, I don't think they really pictured that there was going to be such an adoption that's happened, especially over the Gen Zers and Gen Y. I mean, no, it's very religious adoption of it. And this comes from the fact that they like to be much more mobile with their cash. And they just hit a very ripe time for it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Question number 4 is, if you could sum up your life so far into one moment, like an event or a place and time in your life, what would it be?
I think that life is made up of many moments that have been very interesting. I think if looking back, what was the best in my career at this point for NYIAX was really meeting Mark Rimbaum, because he opened my eyes to what we could do with financial exchanges into my medium for digital, and it was eye-opening how you can marry these two very disparate industries into one, and why it made sense to bring that sort of financial rigor into our industry. So I would say it was meeting him. He's a character. He is like my dad. So it
was a good fit.
It was a good fit.
Oh, that's great. Number 5, do you follow any special diet? This really is because on crypto Twitter, the meat diet, like the exclusively carnivore diet is like a big deal. So are you meat only, keto, vegan?
Well, I eat everything, but let's say my number one favorite is probably to do. I love fish. I'm a huge sushi eater. Oh, but cool. It would be probably sushi, pasta, and wine. So that would be my diet.
Sounds good. Oh, great, wonderful, really great chatting with you, Carolina. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
My one thing that I do want to say is that if women want to come into this industry, they should try it. They should go to any of the meetups that happen all over the place, from large metropolitan areas to smaller towns. They can even come in on webinars, and they should see if it could fit into their industry. They should look at trying to meet people, whether it's online or in person, or changing that online to in person, so they could start creating networks. And it doesn't have to be just with women. It could be with men, or anybody that you feel comfortable with that could help you. But especially women should be looking at it. And I feel very passionate about that.
I totally agree with you. Really appreciate your time. Thanks so much, Carolina. It's been great chatting with you today.
Thank you so much for the time. It was great to speak to you as well.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Speaking of Crypto with Shannon. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit speakingofcrypto.com and Facebook and Twitter at Speaking Crypto. We'll catch you next time.